video, we have a great Ageless Education presenter. His name is Rudi Hoffman. Rudi Hoffman is a fellow human sharing about 99.9% of the same DNA you have.
That's my only claim to fame. That's my accomplishment so far.
He is the world's leading authority on funding and financial matters relating to cryopreservation, a life extension modality. Currently, over half of the funded cryonicists on Earth have been assisted by his firm. He is 100% committed to the anti-aging, life extension, and science-based behaviors and attitudes shared by People Unlimited. So please help me welcome Rudi Hoffman. He's going to be talking about strategies for funding your cryonic suspension. Woo!
Somebody turned it off.
Was it me?
Go turn it on.
Check. I like this one.
No, somebody turned
Check.
it
Here we go. All right, there's 30 seconds of my life where I will not get back. Fortunately, we hopefully have a long life. Anyone in this room committed to the idea of living for a very, very long time or possibly forever? I think that would be most of us, and certainly all of us who are serious about this. I cannot tell you how excited I am about this. I have been thinking hours and hours and days about this presentation, about being here this moment. I've been staying up nights thinking about what I can do, seriously, to reach you folks from my heart and my head. I happen to eat, live, and breathe kind of what I do. I'm pretty good at it. But my groups that I'm usually presenting to, quite frankly, are often kind of scientist groups. And this is a interesting difference that's going to be very, very interesting. I'm really fascinated to find out what comes out of my mouth myself. And so I made a bunch of notes. It says, smile, have fun, be happy. Okay, Rudi, I'll do that. I'm here to win friends and influence people. I flew a couple thousand miles to be here at this moment, just for this event. And thank you. And I also want to thank David Shoemaker and Susan for graciously putting me up. And so far, we have yet to destroy your house. That's a good thing. I got 30 minutes. I'm going to get the hook in 30 minutes. We're going to cover a lot in a short period of time. If you can give me 100% focus, the same kind of intensity we saw in our cool dance just now. And so that is good. What do we know about cryonics? Not Rudi Hoffman. Rudi Hoffman is only part of this thing. Although the nice thing about this group is you understand that we all have egos, and that's probably okay. And it's probably very important, in fact. I, like you, believe that I'm a pretty cool human being. And I think I deserve to live a long time. And I am absolutely committed to overcoming the tyranny of permanent death and death in general. One of the big factors I want to get across is that distinction. But I have a PowerPoint to walk through, so we're going to make sure we cover everything. And we're going to start with this. This is a boring bio. Basically, it says I'm a leading writer of life insurance and funding for cryonics in the entire planet, which I'm kind of proud of, quite frankly. Basically, like yourself, like many of you in this room, I'm also an entrepreneur. I basically kind of run my own business. And so here's a brief bio, and also what we're going to cover. So in the next 27 minutes, we're going to cover about 40 years of my experience in life and about 25 years of learning about the interesting modality called cryonics. The science behind that, whether it may be a fit, this may or may not be for you. But if you will give me a moment to talk about this, you may want to make a new decision based on new information. How many of us would like to consider ourselves kind of open-minded to various things? And any of us people feel pretty open-minded human beings in this room? I've been reading Jim and Bernie's book. I really liked it. I liked it better than I expected, quite frankly. I like it a lot. And I want to pay you for a book and get a signed book. I've been reading, and one of the things that I thought was impressive about that is the fact that Jim and Bernie understand we have to continue to learn and grow and develop new modalities as they become available. Yeah. So take a minute, just imagine, if you will, for a moment, that you're not sitting in this amazingly comfortable facility we have here, but instead you're sitting on this somewhat uncomfortable airplane. I came in a plane looked very similar to this, not quite that comfortable actually. So you're sitting there and you finally got in there and you got on that plane, you're excited because you finally made that thing and you're relaxing and you get laid, you're taking off and everything seems to be going fine. Now you're cruising along, all of a sudden you hear this clunk. And then you hear another clunk, clunk. And you think, well, that didn't sound very good. And then the pilot comes on. His voice is calm. He's a professional. He says, well, folks, I have a little news for you. We have lost several engines. This plane is definitely going to be going down. And there's nothing that can be done about it. We do have about 15 minutes. We will allow you to call. You can use your phones. You can call you need to call. But realize that in about 15 minutes, this plane is going down. So what goes through your mind? What kind of anxiety? Anybody be frustrated? Anybody? And think about all the time you spent in the gym, all the vitamins. I still have my vitamins. You forgot to tell me about my vitamins. I got a third of, just to show you I'm one of us kids. I take a boatload of these things too. So all the vitamins you've taken, all the exercise you've done, all the great care you've taken of your body, it's not going to make heck much of a difference. So what goes through your mind? And how he said, the pilot continues, however. He said, you know, we do have something you should know about. We do have some experimental parachutes. We have as many as people need, but there is not proven. We can't prove they're going to work. But if you want one, you can raise your hand, you can get one. Anybody interested in taking that experimental parachute, even if it's not guaranteed? Yeah, me too. So thank you. I think we're on the same page. If any of those not smart to figure that metaphor, basically the parachute there. Hey, could be some, Joe. The metaphor is cryonics, and cryonics is this: an experimental procedure that preserves a human being using the best available tech for the purpose of saving future life. And that's something I think is pretty important, possibly, if assuming your life is important, which we all of us believe it is. There's a couple of different cryonics organizations. One of them, shockingly, happens to be within a few kilometers of this. Now, this is just too much of a weird coincidence to actually be true, but it is. Two of the most amazing orgs in the world are very, very close, with, I think, some overlapping missions and purposes. But for various reasons, and we won't go into all of them, although we might go into a few, there's not been a whole lot of overlap yet. One of the reasons I'm here is to see if we can't change that a bit, to maybe generate some, so we say, rapport and open-mindedness on all parties. And so Alcor happens to be here in Scottsdale. That's the outside of the facility. I was there yesterday. This is the inside. These things are called doers, as you probably know. And some of you, I think, any of you actually been there? I think some of you, oh my goodness, a whole bunch of you actually toured. Well, you could get up and do this presentation. Now what's not showing here is the new technology they've just added. They've just added a huge CAT scan machine and a bunch of other tech to improve things. And so what I might ask you is, what do you know about the new and improved protocols and technologies and now are actually becoming online? Alcor is one of the orgs. The other org that you may not know about, quite frankly, is an org called Cryonics Institute. Anybody heard of Cryonics Institute? Thank you. Any idea where it's at? No, not Florida, Michigan. Near Detroit, Michigan, a little town called Clinton Township. And Clinton, you heard of Clinton Township? And I'm a member of both these Cryonics organizations, and the Cryonics Institute is not actually as well known, but it's something that may be of interest, even though it's obviously farther. Its global cost is a little more accessible, so that may be something that we should consider. By the way, this is the inside of the Cryonics Institute. Their doers they are actually about the same number of people in cryopreservation, about the same number of members. Both fine organizations, been around more than 35 years. Alcor is like 47 years old. These are pretty venerable orgs. Anybody relate to this? I like this cartoon. It's in my book. I didn't generate it, but I got used permission to use it because it has been, not in this room, but outside, in the outside world, where we still live and have influencers, this has kind of been the human condition for as long as most anybody can remember. People simply walking over the cliff of death. Anybody find that completely unacceptable? Yes. Can I get an amen for this group? Yes. I'm gonna see if I can't channel my inner like you guys. My dad was a college prof. My grandfather was a pastor and college president. So yeah, what's that? Absolutely, yeah, maybe that's it. So suffice it to say, I think this is an unacceptable state of affairs.
That's right.
And so let's talk about the modalities. Now this is the cryonics is basically, and you're going to wear this metaphor out because it's an important metaphor, but it also relates to what you guys are already involved with doing, which is trying to find a bridge to get to the next level of technology. What I am asking you to consider is that cryonics is one of those bridge technologies that can get us where we need to go. And this bridge, however, the reality is, like other bridges we're working on, this bridge is actually kind of under construction. It's not perfect yet. And one of the things I happen to care about is reality. And you guys may feel the same way. It's kind of not good enough to kind of hope for something. It'd be nice if we could find a way to actually have as much certainty as possible. But let's face it, we're not going to get certainty on everything, especially the kind of modalities that we need to have right now. I love a thing called double-blind, placebo-controlled crossover studies done by independent people who publish in respected journals. The reality is, cryonics does not have that. Neither do a bunch of the modalities you guys are probably using right now. That doesn't necessarily make it pseudoscience. It does mean we need to do as much as we can to think about, does this make sense? Is this appropriate and in keeping with what we know about what is reality? So the bridge is under construction, and it is closer, and at some point, this is going to happen. The nice thing, the reason I like this slide is because it shows us working together. We actually all simply are human beings pretty much doing the best we can. And you got here in this room, and I got here because we all believe in working really hard to do the best we can, given the backgrounds we have, given the DNA we have. But if we work together, we may be able to cross this bridge and bridge this gap. So let's talk about, look at this. Who, you guys recognize this person? Now, I included this slide not because it's particularly flattering of Rudi Hoffman or even Jim Stroll. That motherfucker's bald. I included this slide because it shows, this is the first RadFest I went to, 2016. If you also attend the Rad, oh, wow, look at that group. All right, I thought I'd build a group on my side on that one. Yeah, I've attended all three of the Rads. Yep. So far. And what's relevant about this one is something that's relevant to all of us. April 22nd, 2016, I wake up on a Friday morning, out of the clear blue, I got a bump on my upper left thigh. I said, what was this? It did not hurt, it itched. Immediately got in to see the doc. The bottom line is it's cancer. I had lymphoma. Stage 2, a couple of things in my spleen. The good news is modern medicine, technology, and science fixed me. Now, it fixed me at a bit of a cost. Fortunately, the physical cost was borne by my wonderful insurance. Insurance is a pretty amazing thing. I pay health insurance. The premiums were high. I'd pay $2,500 a month in health insurance for my wife and I. Yeah, thank you for saying wow. It's a lot wow to me. Anyway, but the good news is that stuff worked. It absolutely worked. Basically, out of pocket $2,800, but after that, the other 120 or 50,000 was paid for by insurance. But more importantly, the technology worked. Now, it did make me bald. I was embarrassed to go to the Rad bald because I think, wait a minute, these guys are going to be very suspicious of traditional modalities of chemotherapy. They're going to think I'm some kind. They aren't going to like me if I'm bald. So fortunately, some smarter people talked me out of that, and they said, so anyway, that's me. But the good news is, science worked. If I'd had the exact same cancer, this like 10 years earlier, I would be dead. Now, to be fair, it was a very aggressive form of cancer, which is the kind you want that gobbles up the chemo. I had 6 chemos and it worked. So, hallelujah, yay on science. We're here for science. So people say, well, thank God you're cured. I said, well, actually, God and the nature gave me the cancer. The human beings cured it. I included this slide because I thought Bill Andrews was going to be here. Bill Andrews and I have been talking about getting him signed up for cryonics, among other things. Anyway, there's Bill. But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the delay from the time that a technology is actually existing and known about till it gets delivered to human beings. This is highly relevant to you and I where we sit. Because we keep hearing about the amazing technologies, the amazing modalities, the amazing interventions that are going to be happening to cure and reverse aging. And I promise you, I absolutely believe that will be happening and is happening, but we don't know what the time frame is. And we, quite frankly, don't want to be wrong about the time frame because it can take a lot longer than we might hope and think. I'm going to do you the favor of not reading a PowerPoint. If you ever have a chance to do PowerPoint presentations, please don't sit and read the PowerPoint. People can read. Anyway, the bottom line is it took a couple hundred years with a whole bunch of people dying. Just this is one modality. And there are ideas of other things that took a while to get. Penicillin. Okay, excellent. Any others? Anesthesia. Wow. You're very good, Otto. You're gonna like this next slide. Yes, Otto's my plant. Look at and the next word. He really isn't. He just came up with it. The next word is anesthesia. Hundreds, thousands of wonderful human beings during the turn of the century, about 1850, where we had a little thing called the Civil War. A bunch of people getting their legs blown off and stuff. Had a lot of terrible, terrible operations without anesthesia, even though it had been developed in the 1830s, 1840s. Wasn't perfect, but it's probably getting better than getting your arm or leg cut off without it. So the point being, it took a while, and one of the reasons it took a while for these kind of things to get through to the mainstream is because a thing called religion, which I'm going to call organized crime. I used to just call that the Catholic Church organized crime, but I decided to broaden it. Anyway, basically, religion was not in favor of these ideas. They basically said, hey, it's freakish, it's immoral, you're playing God. Defibrillation, immoral, playing God. So this is a relevant factor because it turns out the definition of death is a very elastic type thing. It's not a single binary event. It's more of a cascade of increasingly awful processes that occur. And if you defibrillate people, you can bring them back. Which means they weren't really that dead. They were just kind of sick. So anyway, it's now an obligation of medicine. In vitro fertilization, I just left a good friend in Indiana in Florida. He and his wife have been trying to get pregnant for decades. They finally did IVF. I got a chance to play with this beautiful child, a function of IVF technology. Organ transplants, things that were decried as immoral, especially like heart transplants. And now, of course, it's natural. Of course, we don't have to decide, well, are we playing God? Should we do this operation? No, of course you should do the operation if you can. To do anything but is just stupid and retrograde and immoral. It's very possible that the technology that I'm talking about of cryostasis will become a standard of care in the future as we proceed. And I gotta fly. Okay, obviously, this is not going to be a scientific treatise. I promise you, I'd love to have an hour for that. But let me just fly through 4 or 5 ideas that I think you'll find relevant about the science behind cryonics, and more important, the fact that these are kind of realities. One is, let's start from things we don't just believe in. Some authority figure says something, we believe it. That's not good epistemology. That's not the kind of evidence-based thing that I would hope we at least try for. But meanwhile, if a bunch of scientists write a letter and sign it saying this, I won't read all the PowerPoint, but I will read this. This is signed by 69 scientists who are in positions to know, saying that there's credible possibility that cryonics performed under the best conditions achievable today, this is not 3 or 5 years from now, can preserve sufficient neurological information to permit eventual restoration of person to full health. They're not going to make you this young. But this is basically the IVF slide, and basically also more importantly, there are literally thousands, tens of thousands of human beings walking around today. Have you ever met anybody who was they call them snowflake babies, or basically if you were frozen sperm, frozen embryo, frozen fertilized ova, that are walking around as fully fledged human beings who are absolutely in cryopreservation. They were minus 196 degrees Celsius, and they're alive today. Again, that is proof of principle. Cryobiology freezes all sorts of things. Patient tissues of eye samples, and especially it's good with smaller things that can be frozen without the kind of damage that, quite frankly, does occur on multicellular organisms. But the big factor is we have good reason to believe that brain pattern, our sense of self, is perhaps largely in part of our brain pattern. I know you talk a lot about that, Jim, the various patterns that we have developed that are probably a function of the way our brain is put together, the way those molecules are there. A very reasonable question a lot of scientists ask is memory such an ephemeral thing that the cryopreservation process would basically make it go away? Well, it's a published paper with these guys, C. elegans. They're not really smart. They don't do a whole. You can't teach them how to sit them back and beg. They're not good pets, but they are good. They can be taught to basically go left or right on a T-square. And after cryopreservation, the worms recalled their programming. The point being, there's a pretty good reason that biological activity and brain pattern can continue. That's important. This is intriguing. Any of you know anybody who's had a heart operation? Any heart operation? Right before I came, I was talking with my friend at the Porter's Chamber. He basically has his hands in people's hearts and chests all day long. He's an assistant to a open heart surgeon. I was telling him about cryonics. He said, every single heart operation we do, not one, every single one, they cool their patients down. Why do you think they do that? Because it slows down biological metabolism. And that is basically what is the current medicine. It's also one of the reasons that DARPA is funding about $100 million on the organ preservation to basically be able to save people by cooling them down to get them to safety. This guy, he's got a smile on his face. He looks like he's at the People in Liberty rally. But he's relevant not because of his smile, but because he was frozen stiff as a board. Pretty unusual circumstance, to be fair, but the guy was frozen stiff as a board. Obviously not a medical cryopreservation. He got stuck in a snowbank, and after a couple hours, they brought him back, and he's still alive. Again, not an ideal circumstance of freezing, but it does prove that people can come back from hypothermia. And there's a bunch of those. You can Google for them independently. Again, here is a bit. Any of you got a new technology? There's a newfangled technology. I understand some of you might have here in this really advanced area. Any of you have refrigerators in your home? Why? Well, yeah. You. Thank you. Good. Thank you for testifying. What do those refrigerators do? They basically preserve biological tissue because it slows down the process. Basically, the reason that we put our lettuce and our salads in the fridge is because it lasts a week instead of a day. That we know that. This is not something that's questionable. And so the point being, there's some pretty good principles here. It's not a double-blind placebo-controlled study. We don't have dogs and rats and human beings back from cryonic temperature yet. But that does not mean that cryonics does not work, in that working right now basically means it preserves the full pattern of you. And the full pattern of you makes a difference. One of the challenges, obviously, especially in this group, is that not just this group, other people, is there's a word called death that we all want to avoid, and I want to avoid it too. I was trying to figure out, the reason I kept staying up hours trying to think about this presentation is how can I talk about this without explaining the way the process generally works, which you kind of need to be quote dead. The quote is a big difference that you guys hopefully do understand. we know that people who've been revived after the heart stopped, they weren't really dead. It turns out that people who we cryopreserve are not really dead, which is why we call them patients. These are patients. One of the ideas that I really would like to get across to you guys individually and the group is that the definition of death is basically wrong out there, because death, as it's generally thought of, is an irretrievable, unstoppable process. And I want to talk to you about something called living, and the fact that there's this is another mode that might enable you and us to continue to live, because we turned out they simply called that death prematurely. We weren't really dead. We were just at a time of ignorance before the Enlightenment values have taken over that will explain, no, these people weren't dead at all. They were just, if you go back a couple hundred years, people were dead all the time. In fact, there's a whole industry of people trying to have bells. You ever see the thing that had bells on there? This is not my presentation. That happens when you go off script. So anyway, yeah, there's little bells things, so you could say, hey, I'm not really dead. So basically, it turns out that the definition of death has to do with what the current medicine is able to bring to bear. And the future medicine is going to bring amazing things to bear, and we all know that, which is why. But I got to talk about the bottom line affordability, because here's the deal. Let's say you're completely convinced this might be a cool thing to do, among other things you're doing, including a bunch of other stool stuff that we all kind of do. So this might be a fun thing to try and do. But if it was only available to tech billionaires, that's a moot point. So I want to talk to you about the affordability of cryonics. And again, I cannot tell you that this cryonics is affordable for everybody. I wish it was. It may be eventually. Right now, because of the fact that this is kind of a specialty technology, and they want to make sure there's enough money set aside to have the organizations be stable, we have to have life insurance. The cool thing about it, there's a technology called life insurance. I read your observation about life insurance. It's not really life insurance, it's death insurance. And you're right, Jim. I read his book this morning. And you're right, that is, for traditional life insurance, it's just death insurance. Unless you're using life insurance to maybe fund your cryopreservation, in which case it really could be life insurance. How's my time? So anyway, I just want to mention a couple of things. There's a technology called, the new products of life insurance are pretty amazing. They basically are like an investment type program with an indirect exposure to the Standard & Poor's 500 index that enables you to have tax-free creditor protected growth in the cash value, meaning that, for instance, a lot of people need ways to pay themselves a little bit of the money they make. And if we're going to live a long time, and I may say a few things that are controversial here. Can this group handle a little controversy? I don't know. Can you handle controversy? All right, I'm going to say a few controversial things. Thank you. So basically, it helps to have a program that enables you to pay a little piece of the money you make to yourself. If we really believe we're going to take care of ourselves, and we believe in taking care of ourselves, one of the people you should pay is you. And the investment-grade life insurance programs we work with enable you to kind of pay yourself out of the money. This guy paying $185 a month for a $300,000 life insurance policy, which, by the way, is about 1.5 times the amount of coverage really needed for full body cryopreservation currently. The reason I'm talking about higher face amounts here is because it's helpful to have larger face amounts to cover the potential cost increases due to inflation and technological enhancements. So I don't want to get stuck on the weeds too much here, but conceptually here, it's possible to have $300,000 of immediate coverage for $185 a month. But if that $1.7 million at his age 100, which he's going to live to, is available if he doesn't die. That's cash value. That's called living benefit. This lady is $150,000. She's 37. She's paying $151 a month, and her cash value grows to $1.2 million. This guy, a lot of folks, including my friend David, have a thing called term life insurance. Term insurance is just level for a term or period of time. And for a lot of us who kind of believe there's a pretty good chance that aging and death could be fixed kind of quicker rather than later, you might consider term insurance. It's really cheap in the early years, especially if you're younger. Now this guy happens to be 27. He bought $400,000 for $344 a year. If you're basically under age 30, you can buy a 20-year term for about $252 a year. Doesn't need to be paid annually the first year, but that's pretty accessible. Pretty reasonable, doable cost. Not everybody, I can't cover everybody, but we may be able to find out some people that can get covered. And it's also possible to pay this thing off at a lump sum basis. This is a relevant factor for people who maybe are thinking about, maybe we got a few years on us. We aren't old, we're still young, we still have a few years on us. And maybe we don't have a whole lot of cash flow. Many people happen to be sitting on unused equity in their home, quite frankly. And I don't want to go there. It turns out there's a new modality. If you're 62 or over, there's a thing called a reverse mortgage, which basically enables you to access the cash out of your home. You never have to pay it back until you or your partner die. You don't have to, then 2 years after that. Since we aren't going to die in this room, that means you never have to pay it back. It's kind of a cool setup. So anyway, it's possible to borrow that money out or basically pay a lump sum. This gal should put a $65,000 lump sum, pays that $300,000 policy off, or she could pay it in $12,000 a year for 7 years, or $2,600 a year for a while, about 18 years. So the idea being, once there's enough money in the policy, it'll pay itself. And obviously, as quite frankly, you get older, the cost does go up. And this guy, it's about $7,700 for its $160,000. That's still a lot less than people pay for other things. There's people paying $8,000 and $10,000 a year for all sorts of things. Again, this is not accessible to everybody, but it may be for somebody. In this room, it turns out most people fund their cryopreservation with life insurance. And there's also membership dues. So all that makes sense so far. All right, and I need to just jump up and down here to get this guy. Even I cannot make life insurance that sexy. I promise you, I spent 40 years trying, but this is as close as it gets. 40 years in the last 2 weeks staying up night. So basically, I want to reinforce something you guys already know, because you are smart people and you guys stay in touch with the amazing rapid innovations we have going. And if I can just fly through a couple of slides showing how rapid innovation is happening. Once technologies become digital, they follow Moore's law and begin rapid doubling. This is the doubling brain power, showing how the instructions per second per $1,000 has been going up dramatically, and pretty soon we're going to get computers smart as monkeys, and then humans, and then once they're smart as humans, they get smarter by orders of magnitude very rapidly. Hopefully they'll keep us around as happy pets. And we all understand, and you've heard many times. Any of you heard Ray Kurzweil's presentation? And Ray Kurzweil's got a whole bunch of these arcs showing exponential growth and how impactful it is. But it's just hard to overlearn this stuff, because no matter how much I know it, I keep on forgetting. I had a great conversation with David this morning, and so I was saying, well, I don't know if these age reversal technologies will get here that quite fast. We don't even have them for pets yet. But David reminded me, don't forget, we got exponential growth happening that can happen counterintuitively fast. 30 linear steps gives you 30 steps. 30 exponential steps gives you 26 times around the Earth. Pretty cool stat. That gets to fly through these things. How's my time coming? Is that my red light? Blue light? Oh, I guess they're good. Okay. Thank you. Keep me honest. I'll be done in 8 minutes. So basically, you guys know a whole lot of great things are happening with a bunch of smart tech people who are trying to figure out how to end aging. So it is, if we can use every bridge we know about, we have a reasonable, although I don't think guaranteed, chance to win. Microsoft said that it's going to cure or solve cancer. These guys, I love Zuckerberg, bless his heart. He's had a few challenges lately. Everybody's piling on him. But he and his wife have a fortune of $40 billion, as the number I heard at one time. I don't know if it's that high now, but it's a lot. They have committed 99% of their fortune Thank you. Jim's nodding his head. 99% of their fortune to curing all diseases, including aging. How about that? Yay! You'd get him to speak. I love this group. You need to have this group here too. The Organ Preservation Alliance. I'm glad to say one of the guys that developed this is a Cryonics client of mine, brilliant guy, graduated Harvard and Yale, and with a PhD in econ and law. In 3 years, he's taken the Organ Preservation Alliance from nothing to an organization that has had symposium at Harvard and University of California. He's got the DARPA committed to like $100 million in research to do organ cryopreservations. This is huge, guys. This is something that's going to change our lives pretty fast, because a lot of people die because they can't get the right organs, or they can't get them at the right time. And the nice thing about the Organ Preservation Alliance, and one of the reasons that he's been more effective in 3 years than I've been in 25 years of promoting cryonics, is cryonics has a lot of, so we say, baggage in the popular idea. Most people think it's not even an available option, much less an affordable option, and the ones that do know about it think it's for crazy rich guys who are simply trying to freeze themselves. So basically we got now in contrast, organ cryopreservation, everybody knows, of course that has to be done. It's obvious, but it turns out it's pretty hard. Anyway, it's being worked on. These guys are great. You're going to hear more about them. I think you've heard of this thing. Anybody hear of that thing? Yeah. Yay! All right, that was last year. And the future of the Earth will probably be written not by humans, but by AIs, in my opinion. And AIs are going to think this is a big deal. Any of us, what happened on July 20th, 1969? Hey, got that. We got a smart one in the back there. Yeah, that's right. We landed on the moon. So that most of us think it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big watershed moment. In my mind, and I could be wrong, this is a bigger watershed moment. Watson wins this impossible to win game show against these two ridiculously smart guys. We're all pretty smart in this room. These guys are probably smarter than us. I know Ken Jennings is smarter than I am. Anyway, but guess what? Watson is smarter than both of them. So basically, this is the beginning of a huge paradigm shift on the planet. AI is happening. It's happening rapidly. That will impact everything, including cryonics, making all this more and more credible, believable, and reasonable. So here's my conclusion. I can read it. I won't read it. You can read it. So basically, what we want to do is, I've got a call for action coming up. If I've been able to say a few things that might make you interested in learning more, because you guys are smart, open-minded people, here's my official call for actions on the next slide. One, took me a mere 17 years of my life, but I finally got my book done. And I'm rather proud of it. It's called The Affordable Immortal. Maybe You Can Beat Death and Taxes. Anybody in favor of that? Yeah. Basically, I'm kind of proud of this book. I mean, and not because you read it? Yeah. Thank you very much. Anyway, the reason that my people and a lot of folks have found this helpful is that basically it assumes you're a pretty smart dude to start with. It assumes you're reasonably skeptical, but you also want to find out what the details are and how this thing might work and if it's a reasonable fit. So it's both a fiction book and a nonfiction book. It covers a lot of stuff. They're $20 on Amazon. I'll sell it to you signed for 10, or unless you got 5. In this case, it takes 5. If you don't have 5, I'll probably ask nice and I'll sign it to you for free. Although I only have like 6 left. So the other thing I do have that you can have for free is this is a Long Life magazine that is publishing the book. This is the first full chapter of the book, and you're welcome to have one of those from me. So that's a couple of different options for research. We want you guys doing your homework. We believe in that you should do adequate research and feel comfortable with things. And so here's my official acknowledgments. Thanks again to these wonderful human beings who were kind enough to invite me and hopefully move some things forward. I'm working on a TED Talk. It's going to be half this length and twice this good. So anybody, hopefully you'll see me on TED. And you say, hey, I saw him back on March 16th. Damn, you wasn't nearly that good. But I'm hoping it could be pretty good soon. Anyway, here's my official call for action. We don't want you to take stuff on faith. people that actually take too many things on faith will probably fib you about other things. That's part of the organized crime we want to avoid. But there's a lot of ways you can do research on this thing, including getting your ass down and going through Alcor and seeing what you think of those folks. If for some reason you got a glitch with Alcor and that's not unreasonable, you might consider the Cryonics Institute, because the whole package with the Cryonics Institute, including the transportation piece, is about $100,000 of life insurance, which in many cases is very affordable. Dave, can I use you as an example? Yes, our man Dave has bought a life insurance policy, in this case a 10-year term. He's not quite a spring chick, I know he looks young, but basically it's about $1,000 a year, $80 a month. So there's a hard number you can put in your pipe and smoke. Your mileage may vary depending on issues, but basically we encourage you to read my book, encourage you to basically do some independent research, and I hope this has been helpful. I think we will call this a day and take questions. Thank you. I'm going to standing ovation. Take a picture of these state people standing up, even though I made them.
Great, Rudy.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So we are going to take questions.
Yes.
We need the mic.
Why does Watson matter?
Great. Thank you. Very reasonable question. So basically, that's one of the gee whiz here. The future is arriving quicker than expected slides, in which basically artificial intelligence, including Watson, are being utilized to give us better medical interventions. Matter of fact, Watson is actually being used by a couple of medical organizations and insurance companies to do analyses, and so basically it has to do with medicine improving as a function of artificial intelligence. Was that responsive to your question, sir? Okay. Why does artificial intelligence matter? Reasonable question, because it's probably one of those things that's going to take a while to trickle down to really where it does matter, and it'll probably be a mess between when it did now and then. One, it could take over the world and things could really get potentially weird pretty fast, but artificial intelligence in all likelihood will mean that we have better, safer, longer, healthier, happier lives in multiple ways. Was that responsive? We're getting closer. Okay, thank you.
Here we are.
You go to.
Yes. I heard the term DARPA mentioned, and for anybody in the room, DARPA stands for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency.
Bless your heart. Thank you. I should not have used that, corrected that. Yeah, thank you.
And they do Star Wars research and development for the military, basically. They look 10, 15, 20, 50 yards ahead in terms of developing technology for the military. So my question is, you mentioned DARPA in relation to this organ...
The Organ Cryopreservation
Yes.
Project,
So
yes.
How does that fit with DARPA?
Yeah, that's a reasonable question. And I touched on a lot of things without going into a lot of detail here, and thank you for, I should never use an acronym without defining the acronym. But the answer is that the military is obviously interested in finding a way to get soldiers who get wounded in the front lines safe and back and fixed. The challenge, of course, if they bleed out while at the front line before they can get them back to the hospital, then they're maybe permanently dead. So the idea is that the DARPA is interested in one, cooling people down on the front lines to slow the process down, slow biological processes down till they can get them to where they can fix them. DARPA is also interested in being able to have organs that can be replaced to take care of their soldiers. So basically, it's a life-saving technology that our friends in the military are working. And so instead of trying to figure out how to kill people, they're trying to save people, which is, I think, better. Was that responsive, sir?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Two questions. One, what is the most sophisticated organism that's going from clinical dead to brought back to living state?
Okay, you want me to do that one?
Yeah.
Well, we know that wood frogs freeze themselves every year. and they do that without our help. We do have basically organs that have been rabbit kidneys that have been cryopreserved and then still are enabled to make the rabbit viable for a period of time, not indefinitely right now. We don't have as, I keep asking my Dr. Greg Fahey, it's one of the things I wanted to mention. I think Fahey's come talk with you guys, or he's talked to Brad.
Yeah.
But Fahey, it's responsive to your question. Basically, we have organs, we don't have full animal models actually back from cryonic temperature. We do have tardigrades, which are little teeny animals which are very hardy, that will go through. Basically, tardigrades are little tiny animals that we can cryopreserve. They come back, they still mate, they fuck like rabbits, they get happy. So that's the small answer is tardigrades.
Great. Second question, just curious, when you talk about the state that someone's in the preserved state, there's no legal issue with paying the insurance if they're not considered dead?
Yes, thank you. Another great question. The life insurance does require a thing called a COD, Certificate of Death, signed by a medical professional at our current level of technology. The related question, if cryonics works and the person comes back, is the insurance company want the money back? No. But it does need a current state-of-the-art, basically, signature in order to actually determine there is a bright, shining line as far as the insurance company is concerned where you are, quote, legally, but not necessarily biologically dead. You think about it. You think about that. You think that people's brain pattern goes away the minute some doctor signs a sheet? Does that make sense? Of course it does not. Now, at some point, the cascade does begin to get awful. There's a cascading events of thickening blood acidification, coagulation, a bunch of bad things, especially room temperature, in 8 or 10 or 15 minutes. But if you can cool people down even a little bit, you got a half an hour, 45 minutes, or called an hour and a half. And so the ideal is these technicians are right by your side to send you on your ambulance ride to the future. Was that reasonably responsive? Otto, I think. Otto, who figured out that anesthesia was the next word on the slide.
Pure guesswork. Question for you, Rudi. First of all, thank you for your presentation. It was so colorful and covering a lot of things. My question is, the safest way right now, as science is concerned, for the human application is frozen fertilized egg cells. Is that correct? For humans. We know for sure this works for human frozen fertilized egg cells. Do you have any idea how long these egg cells can be frozen?
Yes, that's a reasonable question. Decades. I've had stem cell, I basically had, my wife and I had stem cells pulled out of our fat and spun down, injected into us, and then some of them were stuck into a cryonic dewar. They said, no, this is stem cell intervention, it's not cryonics. But it uses the same technology. I asked the very question, Otto, how long are those things good for? At minus 196 degrees Celsius, folks, nothing happens biologically. There's cosmic rays that, over millions of years it might get, but basically for reasonable amounts of time, if it takes 50 years or 500 years or 5,000 years for the tech to get there to bring us back, you're still there. So the time factor is a non-issue once we get you to minus 196 C. Reasonable question.
Yeah, so regarding the elasticity of the definition of dying and how actually technology's made it elastic, right? So but could you just explain the limits of when
we don't believe in limits. This is People Unlimited. Sorry.
When
you know what? Joe. This is People Unlimited.
when the limits of when people can be suspended. In other words, how soon?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's a question I thought you were trying to get to.
I was trying to get to it.
Yeah, before I interrupted you rudely.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. That's a very good question, Joe. Let me honor that question, first of all. Thank you. Very nice. The time factor and logistics factor is a very reasonable question. That was some of the questions I had when I signed up for Cryonics 24 years ago. That's my bracelet. David has hit one on as well. Basically, that bracelet says that here's some protocols related to your question. The technicians need to cool you down do something. There's some protocols of pushing 50,000 units of heparin designed to stop the acidification that starts to occur and cooling you down with water ice. Should that protocol take place, then we basically have 6 or 8 hours to have some further technologies that basically will preserve brain pattern based on the photomicrographs that we have.
So ideally, if that happened to a person and they wanted the benefits of cryonics, they would have to be around other people and able to get that treatment.
Yes, that is
Right?
correct. If you sign up for Cryonics and you get your insurance policy and get it paid for, you get your paperwork handled, you handle everything right. Good for you. You're one who makes you one out of one. You're the 0.00001% of humanity doing this smart thing. But then you do something stupid. You decide you got to be a man and macho dude, and you go climb a mountain, you fall in a crevasse someplace, and we can't get your ass. You're dead. I'm sorry. Excuse me, I said the D word, but the reality is you're not coming back. So basically, it helps if you make reasonable. One of the reasons it's so cool about this organization is you guys have a community that is like nothing I have ever seen. And I say that very sincerely. There's some trade-offs, there's some little things that give me a little tickle in my head, but you're familiar with that, I don't know. But as I was talking with David, I think as a whole, the important things that you guys are doing are so important that we should remember what Jim continually stresses: people are not our enemy. Death and aging are our common enemy. Can I get an amen to that one?
Hi. You may have answered this. Did you mention that Alcor is involved with organ preservation as well?
That's a great question. I did. The short answer is no. Okay. Other than the fact that a number of people involved in cryonics are involved in the medicine and the intervention of figuring out organ preservation and organ preservation research. So this has been really, really helpful. I'm thrilled with the questions. I don't want to overstay my welcome.
Yeah, I have one thing. So, you said real clearly people can come to you to actually, they want to sign up or want to know more. But you mentioned the Cryonics organization in Michigan, and then of course we have Alcor here. So from what I gathered, the one in Michigan is considerably less expensive. Do they have the same technology? Are they equal technologically wise?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, Jim.
Would you recommend either one of them in people's choice?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's a little more nuanced than it might seem at first light because there's a number of factors to consider. Yeah. If you're a computer software engineer, and by the way, 70% of my clients, our Cryonics clients, are software engineers. Really smart dudes. These are guys that work at Google. They are doing AI, robotics. They're doing bleeding egg stuff. They're smart dudes. So you're a software engineer and you're 22 years or 25 years old. The cost of your life insurance is the difference between $150,000 and $300,000 is $30 a month. It's a non-issue. So Alcor is probably the reasonable place to do. If you're 55 or 65 or 75, and especially if you're on the near Michigan, and the Cryonics Institute might make more sense. Their actual cost of the CI of their cryopreservation is only $35,000. That, however, is $35,000 is if you still got to find a way to get yourself there. So, and we have minimums in the insurance. So basically, the package that is CI package is private air ambulance and transportation, and CI cryopreservation, which is basically either $100,000 or $143,000, whichever, if you want private air ambulance. So it kind of depends on the circumstance. They're both fine organizations. Alcor does put a lot more money in the Patient Care Trust Fund, which is a very important component to the stability of the organization. Alcor has $12 million and theirs, CI has $4 million. They both have patient care trust funds designed to take care of the patients in perpetuity. Great question.
So you're saying, in other words, that Alcor has maybe a better chance of staying in business
we
over a period of time
think,
because
they're
of that
both
trust
pretty
fund.
stable. They're both designed to stay in business. Alcor has a more conservative way of setting money aside, and quite frankly, no one has considered a figure set aside potentially enough for the possible cost of resuscitation on the other end. It's an unknown. Sorry.
It's an unknown
Wish I-
cost, yeah, okay.
Laura?
Oh, we did have one more.
Okay, this is our last question.
Please make it a good one. Say, can I have your babies? Rudy, can I have your babies?
No, I don't have any. I would consider it, but I never considered it. Yeah, so my question is, you know how credit unions and everything have like group funds and group whatever?
Right.
So this is like, let's make a deal. If a bunch of us here want to do this, can you give us way lower premiums if we act as a unit rather than onesie, 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 onesie?
That is a possibility, and the also possibility exists that Alcor may have some kind of possible way to make that work as well. A reasonable question. I can't commit to it, but it certainly is worth exploring. So let's agree to explore. Let's agree to live. And thank you guys very much for your very kind attention.